Hi everyone, my name is Justina Pore. I'll be leading this webinar today. I want to give people an extra minute to join, so I'll be starting at 1 minute past the hour. Hello everyone, welcome to Applying the Leader's Mindset in Uncertain Times. My name is Justina Pore. I'm your host. I'm here with my colleague Margot. Margot will be helping me out. She will be looking at the chat. I will occasionally be stopping to ask you questions so that you can provide your answers, and I will really bring the content to life, and Margot will be monitoring the chat on her end. Margot?
Hi everyone, and welcome to this Makeup webinar for those of you who couldn't make our date earlier this week. I'll say we have a small group here today, so please do make use of the Q&A function. Any questions you'd like us to answer live, send them through the Q&A and we'll read them and answer them for the benefit of everyone. And please also make use of the chat. To do this, make sure that you change your setting on the webinar chat to all panelists and attendees. The default will be to panelists only, which means me and Justina. So to ensure that we can have an ongoing discussion and everybody can read the comments that you're sending in the chat, just right above the box where it says type message here, make sure you switch that setting to all panelists and attendees. Unless, of course, you'd like to send us a private message, and then you could send it just to us two panelists. So yeah, let's keep the chat going, and you're all muted, so any contribution you'd like to make, do it through the chat.
Yes, and we'll also be leaving the last few minutes for a Q&A live, so if you want to save your questions for then, that's all right as well. So without further ado, I'll get right into it. The past several weeks have been, as we all know, a time of extreme uncertainty and anxiety for a lot of us. Everyone has a lot of questions that don't have easy answers. And that has resulted in the fact that public officials, health officials have had to come on TV a lot, make lots of announcements, update us on what's going on. And there's one public health official that has really stood out from the crowd. And I want to take a moment to look at her communications. I'm talking specifically about Dr. Bonnie Henry. I'm certain that you've seen at least one video that she's put out. She's the public health official of British Columbia, and the way in which she talks to the public really sets her apart. She's so personable. She has so much humanity, so much authenticity in the way that she comes across, that people have really latched on to that. And she's been praised in newspapers and all over social media because people are really starved for these kinds of qualities in leadership, and the way in which she's able to convey her empathy and her real genuine feelings to the public have really captured the public attention. So the takeaway here is that the mindset that she approaches her communications with really lets her connect with the public in a way that few public officials can. So the takeaway really is that getting clear on the mindset that you want to embrace in this critical moment is what's going to help you effectively respond in crisis situations. At the Humphrey Group, we know that leadership and communication are intrinsically connected. We've developed this webinar to guide you in using the leader's mindset to develop your crisis communications plan so that you can better support your team, your clients, and your stakeholders and successfully navigate this really unprecedented situation. So here's how the next 45 minutes will look. First, we're going to establish a common definition of leadership. Next, we're going to explore why leadership starts with mindset. Then I'll walk you through the 6 principles that define the leadership mindset, and I'll show you how you can apply these to your crisis communications. So before I move into mindset, I want to get clear on what leadership means because it's become somewhat of a buzzword recently. So when I say leader, I want to know from you, who do you think of? Who comes up in your mind when I say a leader? Let me know through the chat and I'll check back with Margot shortly. At the Humphrey Group, we have a very succinct definition of leadership. We know that being a leader means being someone who can inspire an audience to act on a vision. There are many key words here, so I'm going to pause and look at each of these individually. I'm going to start with inspire. Inspiration is a very particular kind of motivation, right? It's not threatening someone. It's not forcing someone to comply with you. It's really convincing them in such a way that they want to do it out of their own free will. So it's a very particular kind of influence. The next important word here is audience. Your audience as a leader is anyone you're speaking to at a given time. It can be your boss, it can be your direct reports, maybe other teams that you work with, your colleagues. As leaders, you need to be aware of your different audiences that you serve, and we need to be able to talk to and connect with each of these audiences. The next key word here is to act. Action is critical for leaders. Anyone can be inspiring for 5 minutes, but the point is to get people to actually act on something. You want to be able to inspire them to change their behavior and do something else. And finally, we have vision. In order to inspire people to act, we need a clear vision, a clear goal or purpose. Every time we communicate as leaders, we need to do so with clarity and with purpose. So I'm going to take a pause here. Margot, what are people saying in the chat?
We have a whole variety of responses in the chat, several Barack Obama nominations, and then a real variety of other leaders, from other political leaders, people like Nelson Mandela, to Mother Teresa, to my yoga teacher. Actually, that's the last one that just came in. And then a shout out to the Olympic and Paralympic leaders who made the hard decision not to go to Tokyo this year and ended up leading the IOC in that decision to postpone. So a real variety.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great diversity of different answers. Yeah, and I think what this really captures is that when I say leader, I don't mean your boss, right? If you're a CEO, then your leadership role is clear. But at the Humphrey Group, we know that everyone is a leader in their own way. You don't need authority over someone else in order to be a leader. Some people need to lead down, so to direct reports to people that they manage. And in challenging times, they need to reassure those people and provide them with guidance. Others need to lead up to their supervisors, to their CEO. And this can be very difficult when our higher ups are dealing with a truly unprecedented situation. Other people need to lead laterally, so to colleagues on the same team who we need to support during this really difficult time for everyone. So we're all leaders in our own way. Every time we communicate with someone with the intent to inspire an action, we're leading. Leading up, leading down, and leading laterally all have their own unique challenges and opportunities. But regardless of our role, good leadership communications start with the right mindset. So let's get clear on the mindset that we need to embrace. Leaders see the world in a way that resonates with people. They have a real clarity that's easy to latch onto for people. And this way of thinking and seeing things is what I mean when I say mindset. Great leaders are able to use their mindset to successfully inspire others to act. And in order to craft inspirational communications, a leader first needs clarity on what their mindset is. So we've broken down the leadership mindset into 6 principles. And these are vision, conviction, information to inspiration, courage, everyday, and audience-centered. So I'm going to go through each one of these and I'm going to discuss how you can use them to craft your crisis communications. I'll start with vision. Your vision as a leader is the potential future that you want to create. So in order to get clear on your vision, ask yourself, what is my goal, my organization's goal over the next 3 months? What picture do I want to paint for my team, for my clients? So think about where you want to be in 3 months and tell me in the chat and I'll check back with you soon. Vision guides everything that we do as leaders. Some people think that just by powering through a crisis, leaders will inspire others to follow suit and power through as well. But that's not how it works. People need to know where they're headed, and vision will tell them that. Vision will give them that clarity. So in order to think like a leader, you really have to start with vision, because vision tells us all as a collective where we're headed together. Vision gives purpose to leadership communications. It clarifies our priorities, and it helps us make strategic decisions on the fly. In the present crisis, then, having a vision for how you want to respond is critical for guiding all of your future communications in this moment. I know that your organization has a vision. Do you remember it right now? If so, think about how you would apply it, how it would apply to this present coronavirus crisis. So for example, if your organization's vision is to offer the best customer service in the industry, then you might say that in the present situation, your vision is to continue offering the best customer service throughout this challenge by enhancing the ways that customers can get in touch with you virtually. That would be how that vision applies to our present situation. So to craft your vision, ask yourself, what is the future that you want to see for your organization, given your current circumstances? What do your clients and your teams need to know about how you plan to adapt to this situation? Your vision might look like, for example, continuing to provide exceptional customer service and supporting your customers in this critical time. Or changing up your policies to offer the most flexible booking options available when so much is up in the air. Or setting up a fund for employees who are unexpectedly facing financial challenges because your organization is proud to be the #1 supporter of single-parent homes. So I'm curious now, what do people say about their vision, Margot?
Yeah, a variety of answers in the chat. So some people are thinking very long term and staying the course. Other people are adjusting for the short-term crisis situation that we're in. So everything from leading people into the new normal in the short term, getting people to a state where they can begin to think about operating normally again, to one contribution that says our vision and mission have stayed the same and our timeline and delivery may have changed, but that the same finish line, different pathway is the contribution. Great. So
great. Yeah, those are great. I think it's critical to get clear on your vision before you get into your communication. So this is a wonderful start. Basically, your vision tells you what inspires you every single day. You know, what is your purpose? Why do you do what you do right now in your role? So a vision really is, it's not a job description, it's not a to-do list, it's not the steps that you take to get to an end goal, it is the end goal. So it's really, in a perfect world, how do you see this current situation being resolved? That's your vision for this moment.
A great question's coming through the Q&A, Justina. So I'll put it to you now. This person is asking, what is more important in your view at this time? Focusing on changing short-term strategies or adjusting the vision to reflect this new normal? So the gist of the question, I think, is should we be focusing on short-term changes that we have to make, or should we be reminding people of that big picture? It's a tough question, but one I'll put to you here.
Yeah, definitely a hard question. I think that these things work together, right? Adjusting your vision and adjusting your strategies necessarily have to go hand in hand. And I'm a big fan of the two-part answer, so I'll just give you one here. I think that in order to change, in order to make it through this current situation, we have to focus on the short term, but it's important to not lose track of the long-term vision. So this might be a time where you have a vision for the short term and a vision for the long term, and they just have to be well integrated so that they don't conflict with one another. And strategies might change as well to respond to each of those. So I think this is a place where a balance between those two horizons that you're working towards might be very helpful. Margot, do you have anything to add?
No, there was actually a follow-up question from the same person who asked the initial question, and they said, or is it a balance? And I think you've addressed that in your answer, Justina.
Great.
Keep the questions coming in the Q&A or through the chat. Thank you for those of you who have sent some already.
Yes, thank you for the questions. I'm going to move on now to conviction and just keep throwing them at me and we'll address them as we go. So our vision is founded on beliefs that we hold deeply, on convictions. And that's why conviction is the second principle of the leadership mindset. So I want to know from you now, what is a conviction that you hold deeply about your organization, about the value that you provide as an organization, or about the value that you individually provide to your team? Tell me about it in the chat. Leaders need conviction. And it's critical to focus on convictions that are positive, especially in difficult times like the ones that we find ourselves in now. Our conviction has to be expressed positively because it has to be aspirational. It has to align with the place that we want to reach, with our vision. So if our vision is the representation of our destination, then our conviction is what will drive the beliefs that get us there. So our conviction has to motivate others to act, to get us closer to our vision. So for example, I could say, I firmly believe that by doing X, we can retain business and grow as an organization. Not, I firmly believe that if we don't do all of these things, we will never make it through this. See, so that's a negative conviction. It has to be positive because people respond better to positive messages than they do to what sounds like a threat. So the conviction has to be expressed positively. Your conviction may be, I'm convinced that our team is strong enough to survive this. Or I firmly believe that our clients know the value we offer and will remain loyal to us throughout this bumpy period. Leaders need conviction because people can tell when you don't believe what you're saying. So as a leader, it's your role to identify an authentic conviction, something that you truly believe, and to communicate that to your audience in a positive way. So I'm going to take a pause here and take some questions. Margot, what are people saying?
Well, people are giving some great answers in the chat to the convictions that they hold personally about their work. One person has said keeping workers safe is the #1 priority. Another has said adaptability and agility will be crucial. We need to feel a bit uncomfortable to push forward as an organization. Flexibility and understanding has to be key. Ensuring we're doing what is necessary and adding value given that we don't have 100% of resources right now. So all great examples of convictions.
Great.
No questions yet, but do
Wonderful.
send them through the Q&A when they come up.
Yeah, so one thing I'm going to add here is that in difficult times, I am not saying that we must lie to our people and say everything is good because we have to keep it positive. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying even if we're facing hard times, we can acknowledge that and still maintain a positive conviction. So for example, I know the next 2 weeks will be challenging, but I believe we can make it through this. We can bounce back from this. Or you can say, go ahead.
Oh, a question on that topic has come up, Justina. It's on the topic of exactly what you are talking about right now. So I'll interrupt you with this great question. Where can we find conviction as leaders in our darkest hours? So as leaders, we're going through this too. You know, we're facing the same anxiety and challenges and frustrations and children at home while we're trying to work and all the rest of it. And so where do we find that conviction? Where does it live?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is something that is going to depend on who you are as a person. Your convictions during this crisis will be based on who you are and what you just generally believe as a person. So, sounds kind of corny. Reach deep within yourself and find something that is a constant for you. What do you value? What is something that you can genuinely find within yourself and hold to be true at all times? I think that's a partial answer. Margot?
Yeah, I think it's a great answer. And sometimes when you do that deep inner searching, convictions pop up that may surprise you. So if you look at convictions you hold in other areas of your life, if work is really challenging for you right now and you're seeking inspiration, think about, you know, the convictions you hold about family, the convictions you hold about friends and your social life. What are the values that guide you in those other areas of your life? The convictions you hold about community generally, you know, not just professional community. And that can be a real source of inspiration. And as I said, sometimes surprising inspiration. If, for example, loyalty is your number one value when it comes to community and family, that can inspire you to think, okay, how would I bring that value of loyalty into my communication about this crisis that I'm going through right now at work? And that's a strategy that we can always apply, not just in times of crisis, but one that can certainly help us in times of crisis.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to approach it, is to look at what's true to you as a person, not just what's true to you, you know, as an employee, as a boss, as a people manager. It's really finding the things that are core and true to you at all times. So here's another example of how you can acknowledge that difficulty and still have a positive conviction. You know, we have faced unexpected challenges before, and we've always pulled through. So I know that we can make it through this one as well. Going to move on now to something very related to this, which is moving from information to inspiration. So let me say right up front that in the present situation that we're facing, sharing information is vital. Facts are critical, and acting based on sound science is paramount. All of that goes without saying, but I'm saying it anyway. But we need conviction to frame the facts, because people are overloaded with information about coronavirus. So just as a quick survey, I want to know how many emails have all of our attendees today received from all of the businesses they've ever interacted with about coronavirus and how that business is responding to coronavirus. 10, 20, 50, 100? Let me know in the chat. We'll see who got the highest number. So what I'm saying here is that nowadays we all have access to so much information. We are constantly seeing new news stories, new press conferences, new province-wide alerts, and we need to manage the amount of information that we as leaders are dumping on our audiences. It's our responsibility to sift through all of this information and decide what we are passing on to our audiences. If we don't do that, it can really overwhelm people, and just throwing so much data at them that they don't know what to do with can really make people sort of freeze. And that's not what we want. What people need now is inspiration, not just more data. They need to be inspired to take action, to make smart decisions, and we can achieve this by sharing our convictions with them before we share the information. So we can express our convictions very simply with a statement that starts with, I believe, or I'm convinced, my belief is. So for example, I'm convinced that by supporting each other, we will make it through this difficult time. There's a lot of focus on transparency nowadays, and rightly so. But the problem is that people often interpret transparency as just sharing more and more and more information. And certainly that's part of it, but that's not really what people want when they want transparency from their leaders. What they want is access to their leaders' beliefs and ideas. So we tend to shy away from talking about beliefs because they seem risky. But what we often forget is that leading with information is risky as well. If we just share information without our convictions, then we risk creating a situation where each person draws their own conclusions from that information. And we may not want that. We may want to guide them towards our conclusions. And we can do this by starting with conviction and then providing the information that supports that. So for example, if you start by saying, I'm convinced our team is strong enough to get through this. You can follow up by saying, here are all the challenges that we've faced over the past several years, and here's how we dealt with each one of them. And we can use this past experience to guide us through this situation. Or you can say, if you're taking measures to protect your employees, I firmly believe that the contingency plan we've developed will protect our staff and allow us to successfully navigate this situation. And then you can follow up with the steps that you're taking in order to protect your staff. So it's really about starting with conviction and then leading up with the information. I'm going to pause here and check the chat. What are people saying, Margot?
Well, Darren wins with 1,000 emails. He said he's been tracking, and close to 1,000 is probably the amount of emails he's received about coronavirus. So I think that's an overwhelming amount of information for anyone at any time about anything, let alone at a time of heightened anxiety and stress. So there you go.
Yeah, I think that's the winner of all the numbers we've heard so far, definitely. So congratulations. Yeah, so this really goes to show too much information is not helpful. So think about the information that you really need to share with your audience in the future, and then identify a conviction that you can couch it in so that you filter the information through that conviction.
A great question came through the Q&A about this. Should information be made relevant to the audience for it to be useful? Now, I know this is something you're going to touch on later, Justina, but I thought I'd ask that question as it's just come in.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. I think that as the 1,000 emails demonstrate, people don't need information that's not relevant to them. I think it's critical to always think about who your audience is and what they need to know, and then selecting based on that. Margot?
Yeah, agreed.
Great. I'm going to move on now. If there are no more questions, I'm going to move on to courage, which is our fourth principle of the leadership mindset. Courage is difficult during this time, and actually this is when we as leaders need to practice it most. So I'm going to pause here and ask our attendees, what does courage mean to you? How do you practice courage in your role, in your organization? Let me know in the chat. I'm interested in your interpretations of courage. Over the next several weeks, courage is going to be critical for us as leaders, and it's going to look different for different people. So courage can mean, for example, making difficult financial decisions when you know that they're the right decision to make. It can also mean speaking up when something isn't right. It can also mean, for example, reducing your operating hours or your operating capacity for a time to keep your people safe. Or it can mean being frank with your people about the challenges that you're facing yourself. So take some time to really reflect on what your audience needs, because your audience needs will tell you how you need to practice courage at this time. So think about what your audience is concerned about at this moment. Maybe they need a plan of action for how they're going to move forward in this moment. Maybe they need a new procedure for how to deal with client bookings that have been canceled. Or maybe they need a meeting to get clarity on how we're compensating people for these cancellations, for example. So just ask yourself, how could you use courage in this moment to better serve your team, your clients, your stakeholders, and all of the audiences that you work with? I'm going to pause here because I'm interested in how people are practicing courage.
Some great answers in the chat, from leading when you don't think that you are the leader. Imagine how much courage that takes, to acting in spite of your fears, feeling fear and acting anyway. That's how Aristotle defined courage. Stepping outside of your comfort zone to do the things that might be tough, but that show personal resilience as well as company resilience. So those hard decisions that so many leaders are making now, to keep that long-term vision in mind and just get through the tough period, takes courage to make those decisions. And then doing something that no one else wants to do, being the one to say, this is what we need to do, and this is why, this is the impact it can have for us.
Yeah.
And then lastly, setting a positive example, being willing to take the time that you need so that your team knows that they're allowed to do that as well, and that you're being authentic and honest.
Yeah, that's so important to lead by example. And I think that this is the moment to say, you know, I need some time, and it's perfectly normal that you need some time too. So those are all great contributions. Thank you. It's really difficult to be courageous, especially in this moment. But the good thing about courage is when you know what your convictions are and when you have a clear vision, those help you practice courage because they remind you of why you're doing it. So those really help you sort of move forward and act courageously and practice courage every day as a leader.
Something coming in through the Q&A that addresses one of the comments we're getting in the chat. So I'll ask this question to you, Justyna, now. Someone has described courage in the chat as honesty and vulnerability. It takes courage to do those things for people, to be those things with people. And then we had a question simultaneously come through the Q&A where someone asked, are vulnerability and courage compatible? And how do you see those two things?
Such a great question. I think that traditionally people probably have not would not put those two words together. But I think more and more, as the face of leadership is changing, people are 100% recognizing that vulnerability is so hard to practice, empathy is so hard to practice, and that they are necessary components of leadership. So I would say absolutely compatible, and in fact, they mutually depend on one another. So absolutely go for it, be vulnerable. It's a wonderful way of practicing courage and leading by example.
This is a hot topic, obviously, because another question has come in about this as you were answering that, Justyna. And actually, this question came up on the webinar we did earlier this week on this same topic. And so here's the question: where is the line between showing vulnerability that can have a positive impact and showing too much vulnerability, to the point where your team feels like they can't trust you, or that you're not sort of like the rock that they need you to be?
Yeah, that's a difficult question to answer, because it's all about balance, right? You need to be authentic. You need to be real with your team. We're going to talk about being audience-centered later, so I'm going to leave a little bit of that to there. But being genuine about how you feel is not going to undermine your team's confidence in you, as long as you are also putting forth your vision, what you're working towards, your convictions, which are positive, and you know you're projecting a confidence that we will make it through this rough patch. Margot, do you have anything to add?
No, I just point again towards the audience centeredness, and really sometimes I think we mistake vulnerability for kind of unloading everything that we're thinking and feeling on people, and that it's not quite what we mean here, and it's not what thinkers like Brene Brown are talking about either when they're talking about vulnerability. There really is a feeling of showing something to your audience so that that connection can happen, and that's different than unloading all of your stress and anxiety onto your audience. So we will come back to this when we talk about audience centeredness, for sure.
Yeah, so again, it's a question of balance, balancing your vulnerability with your convictions, with your courage, and with your vision. I'm going to move on now to every day, which is our fifth leadership mindset principle. So I want to hear from you. Think about your leadership role in your organization. What are you known for? What are your best skills or best qualities? So are you the subject matter expert? Are you the problem solver? Or maybe you're the great listener, great communicator. So think about what you excel at and let me know in the chat. As leaders, it's imperative that we work on our leadership every day. I know that this sounds exhausting and this sounds like the last thing that you have time for right now, but it's critical because our bosses, our direct reports, our colleagues are all going to be looking to us to guide them, and we need to retain their trust and their confidence. And we can do this by focusing on the leadership qualities that we already have, by focusing on the things that we're already good at, and just reminding ourselves to keep constant with those every day throughout this crisis situation. So leadership is really about consistency. It's really about reliability, being on brand. So think about, what do people know you for? Maybe people know that you're the go-to person for creative problem solving. Or maybe they know that you always stay calm and collected under pressure. Or maybe they recognize that you're excellent at building new relationships and connecting with people and really empathizing. These are your leadership traits. Focus on how you can use these to best handle our current situation. So for example, if you're exceptionally skilled at connecting with and empathizing with people, then use that. Reach out to your clients, reschedule things that have been canceled, listen to your team members and really hear what they're saying, really hear what they're going through. Reach out to people and check in with them. These are things that you're already good at, so use these to help other people navigate the situation better. Being consistent in these traits is how you maintain people's confidence and how you make it easier for them to rely on you during this really uncertain time. It'll make it easier for you to lead other people through this. So I'm going to take a pause here and I want to hear about people's strengths that they practice every day.
In the chat, we have a lot of problem solvers, a lot of people saying they are the go-to problem solver. Several people as well saying that they are the one with the positive attitude and the helper mentality and the solution-focused mindset. One question I think that's implied in a comment that we have about this is, what if that brand quality that people strongly associate with you is something that's difficult to practice at this time? So one person has said that she's the coach and the mentor and the one always checking in on the team, and she finds that hard to do remotely. Any advice for her?
Yeah, I mean, we have a whole upcoming webinar next week on virtual leadership communication. So tune in then and we will get into way more detail. But right now, quickly, I would say a lot of the skills that you have as a leader and your leadership traits are all translatable to a virtual setting. You just need to figure out how they work best, how that translates best. So, you know, now is the time to use tools like chat, text message, these quick sort of informal modes of communication. Maybe people don't want to or don't feel up to getting on camera and talking to someone, but maybe just a quick, you know, Google Hangouts chat or Slack message is something that they can handle at this moment. Just get really creative with the tools that you have at your hand. There are so many different apps and softwares, so many different ways of checking in with people that don't require them or that can meet them at their level of what they're capable of handling right now. So get creative with those, explore your new tools, and keep doing what you're doing, keep doing what you're good at, because that's what people need from you right now. So I think that all these different answers that have come through in the chat of people's different strengths that they're practicing every day really go to show that we all lead in our own way. To identify our leadership brand, we just need to reflect on what our strengths are and focusing on keeping true to those during this critical time. Focus on those qualities that you already know you have and practice embodying those every single day. I'm going to move on to the much requested final section, which is audience-centered. Being a leader means being audience-centered, and that's why this is our final principle of the leader's mindset. As leaders, there are many audiences that we need to communicate with daily, and especially during this crisis situation. So I'm interested in what audiences our attendees work with. Who are the people that you need to talk to in this moment? Are they your clients? Are they your stakeholders? Are they your teams? Who do you need to talk to? Who's an audience that's critical that needs to hear from you right now? Let me know in the chat. Each of these different audiences that we interact with as leaders are going to need different things from us at this difficult times. They're all going to have different concerns and different priorities and different questions for us. So to be audience-centered, we need to think through what each of these audiences need from us. What are they going to be concerned about? What questions will they have for us? Being audience-centered is all about taking all of your communications and really putting yourself in your audience's shoes. It means asking, how will my audience feel? What can I do to support them in this critical time, in the immediate future? What do they need right now that I can offer them? It means being aware of your audience's beliefs as well. Listening to your audience, knowing what they value and knowing what they're going to be concerned about. It means telling them what they need to hear to act on your vision. So ask yourself also, what action do I want my audience to take? And what information do they need to take that action? Ask yourself what value you provide in this critical moment. So what is it that I can do for them? What's in it for them? Being audience-centered is about thinking about not only what you need to say, but how you're going to say it. This is not about public speaking. It's about the approach that you take to your communication and the form that you choose for your communication. So it means asking, do my clients really need another email to join my collection of coronavirus emails that just rehashes all of the information that everyone has? Do they really need a phone call about this, or should I just send them an email? Do they actually need to hear something from me at this time? So really just ask yourself, what does your audience need from you right now? Actually, I'm going to pause here because I'm interested in the audiences that people need to talk to at this moment.
Yeah, in the chat we have everyone who's answered saying they need to support a whole range of audiences, from their own teams to external stakeholders to clients to their own colleagues. So I'm anticipating a few questions about how you balance all of those different audiences. And if that's what you're thinking as you're listening to Justyna talking about customizing your communication for various audiences, then do put your questions in the chat and we'll answer them live for you here.
Yeah, maybe I'll just start going on that right off the bat, since I think that we're probably going to get some questions about that. When you're working with different audiences, each of them is going to have different priorities. So there may be messages that are common to all of your audiences, statements that you can make to all of your audiences that will be relevant to all of their concerns. There may be scenarios, however, where if you need to address different audiences, for example, your clients and your team, then you'd have to break that up. You would have to have one communication for one audience and one communication for another, because you know they're going to be concerned about different things. So for example, you know, your team members might be concerned about their family's health, their health, whether they're going to have a job in the coming weeks. Your clients will be concerned about the bottom line, for example. So tailoring your communication to your audience will be really critical, and having a message that either applies, is relevant to everyone, or that's custom for each of your audiences is two alternative ways of handling this. Are there any other questions that have come in that I should address?
Not yet. Yeah.
Wonderful, great.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. So yeah, it's really about paying attention to the concerns and the priorities of each of your audience. A great leader can talk to any audience. It's all about seeing things from their perspective. So start thinking about what audiences you need to inspire in this moment and what they need from you at this time. So we've talked about the leader's mindset. We've talked about a vision, about identifying convictions. We've talked about moving from information to inspiration and not overwhelming people with data. We've talked about being consistent every day, and we've talked about being audience-centered. So when you gain clarity on these elements of your mindset is when you're going to be better equipped to deal with unprecedented situations and to really steer your team through uncertain times. And I want to close here with a call to action for our attendees. My call to action is this. Take 15 minutes this afternoon to put what you've learned here into practice. If you don't already have a vision statement, then take the time to craft one. Your vision is going to guide you in all of your communications during this really difficult time. So it's worth spending time on getting it just right, because that's what will guide you in making your decisions. Next, reflect on the different audiences that you need to reach and on the types of communications that you need to share with them. The most important is for you to gain a clear idea of what you need to say to each audience and how you can best say it to guide your audience without overwhelming them. So I'm going to unshare my screen now so that I can be in a more sort of person-to-person relation here. Great. Thank you very much for joining us today. This brings us to the end of the webinar, and I'm going to open it up now for Q&A.
As we're waiting for the questions to come in, either through chat or through the Q&A function, I'll say that that call to action, Justina, that you gave is something that all of us need to do, not just now, but every once in a while. And really, if our answers to those questions aren't changing, you know, if our answer to what should I be doing over the next 3 months, or who are my key audiences right now, if that isn't continually evolving and changing, that should be a red flag for us. You know, we should take a step back and think, all right, do I need to pay more attention? Do I need to reevaluate what I'm aiming for here and what progress I'm making? Because the world is changing at such an unprecedentedly fast pace that all leaders have continually changing expectations from all the audiences and teams that they serve. And we need to be doing this work on pretty much continual basis.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. All right, perfect timing. Here's a question coming in through the Q&A. This person is asking, I know I need to be audience-centered, but I don't have time to personalize each and every communication. Is it possible to deliver messages that can be reused for more than one stakeholder group?
The answer would be yes, asterisk. The asterisk is it really depends on what that message is. If it's a message that's really not going to be relevant to that audience, if it's not going to be of interest to them, then perhaps just hold off from sending it altogether. You know, if you really want a message that has to apply to everyone and be useful to everyone, then it's worth taking the time to sit down once and devoting the 10 minutes, 15 minutes to craft something that really is going to be relevant to everyone and helpful to everyone. Because what we really want to get away from is just the cookie cutter emails that we've all been getting about this situation, because those are frankly unhelpful. No one reads them. And at that point, you might as well just hold off from doing it altogether.
Yeah, I'll add something that I often share with the clients that I coach, which is that it's important to know the difference between something that's audience-centered and something that's personalized. So a personalized communication that I'm sending to one other person can be crafted in a way that is going to speak directly to that one person. And it's completely possible to speak to 10 people and still be audience-centered. And that doesn't mean I've personalized a message for each of those 10 people. It means I've thought carefully about what is the common thing that binds those 10 people, or what is the vision that they're all serving, or where's the one place that I want to get all of those 10 people to. And I've crafted a message to meet one of those aims. And it's not exactly the same as personalizing. So I offer that as a useful distinction too. Yeah. Another question here. Totally different subject. Do you have any advice on how to motivate family members, young adults in particular, to stay positive and to stay active and healthy in this socially distant work? That is
Oh
the
gosh.
challenge. Isn't that the challenge? That is the
The
challenge we
challenge
are
of the
all
century.
facing. Yes, yes.
Yes.
So what
Um,
thoughts do you have?
okay, so speaking as a young person, I guess, um, it's beautiful outside. It's a really lovely day. The weather's getting warmer. Now is the time to, if you had sort of great self-care habits, well-being habits, then don't give them up. This is the time when you need them the most. And if you didn't already have them, then now is the time to figure it out. I have never seen so many people outside running, jogging, walking dogs. So it's clear that lots of people are taking this really difficult time to sort of find ways of keeping themselves resilient and keeping themselves healthy and positive. And I mean, I don't need to tell you the connection between well-being and exercise. We all know that. We've heard it a million times. Do I have any messages to motivate people? The answer is it will make you feel better if you do these things, if you make the effort, which is often so hard. But just taking that first small step will already help. So do it for yourself, if not for anyone else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would add to that that a routine makes all of us feel better. And that's just how we are as social animals and as the kinds of human creatures that we are. We love routine. And so many of our routines have been taken from us in this situation. So to re-emphasize the point you just made, Justina, about creating new routines, it always helps to have someone doing that with you. Ideally, it would be, our instructor in our fitness class at the gym, or that friend that we meet to go for a walk with or to do some exercise with, but we can play that role for the people in our families too. And it's something we might not be used to doing. We might not be used to saying to our children or our spouse, hey, like, let's go for a run, or let's go for a walk, or let's just sit outside instead of being in front of the TV this evening. But it's really important that we step up in the ways that we can to fill those roles that so many of us are missing. We're missing the people who fill those roles normally in our lives.
100%. Yeah. And I mean, this is where the blessing of the internet and video chat are so helpful. I have made conscious efforts to have virtual hangouts with friends. If I couldn't go for girls' night, then we would have virtual girls' night. It works too, and it may even get on a phone call and put your earbuds in and go for a run and just be with someone else virtually in your headphones if you can't be with them in person. I find that helps me a lot as someone who's an extrovert and who really thrives on connecting with other people. That's helped me a lot. So maybe I'll share that tidbit with you.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say about this question, such an important question, and we could talk about it for a long time, but I'll just say one more thing, which is that this will end. And remembering that and reminding the people in our lives about that is a simple but effective way to help us all stay focused on being healthy, mentally, physically, and emotionally for the long term. And that can help us from slipping into unhealthy habits in the short term as a coping mechanism. If we're thinking this is going to be over, so I'm going to set up some new routines that will serve me in the long term. We know as humans, we're not great at that kind of thinking. So if we can remind each other of those things, it's really helpful. This will end, and where do we want to be when this is over? That kind of takes us full circle all the way back to vision, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's it for the Q&A now, and we're getting close to the hour. So maybe we'll end there unless there are any final questions either in the chat or through the Q&A.
Let's see here. Lots of thank yous. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
If that's it, then I guess we will bid everyone farewell. Thank you very much for joining us. And as I said, we have another webinar on Tuesday on virtual leadership communication. So if you're interested in that, please join us. Same channel, 2 p.m. Tuesday, and I will see you then.
All right.
Can you send that to the, yes, everyone will receive a recording of this webinar. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.